I have an article here from some dope named William Spivey who's asking the tough questions, the real questions like, where are the black people in Shogun? You don't know Shogun is a 10-part series on FX, takes place in 1600 Japan, largely from the Japanese perspective, so it's going to have a large Japanese cast. William, though, has an issue with that. As he says here, he talks about he had watched the 1980 version and, didn't like it, white savior trope, yada, yada, yada. 2024 version focuses far more on the Japanese perspective. And, it goes on and talks about that there ain't many white characters in there. Others are already praising the new 10-part series as a cultural sea change from the 1980 version. I ask the question now that I naively didn't ask in 1980: where are the black people? I don't ask out of a desire to see representation when it wasn't historically accurate. I inquire because there were black people in Japan in 1600. Bullshit. If there was very few. Very, very few. They weren't open to many foreigners at that point. We'll just put it like that. But anyway, he goes on and talks about, according to multiple sources, one of the early real life shoguns, Sakunoe no Tamuramoru, was black, though denied by others. There is a consensus he was something other than pure Japanese, and he is often considered descended from the Anu, the darker skinned indigenous people of northern Japan who were subjected to forced assimilation and colonization. The Anu would be more equivalent to like the native Alaskans, the indigenous Alaskans, that they would say, or the indigenous Australians, perhaps like, Native Americans, Maori, at the darkest, Samoan, something like that. A damn sure ain't black African. I can tell you that right now. I mean, and don't take my words for it. I mean, hell, there's people right here in the comments talking about myself, talking about rewriting history. Does not automatically mean black. Much more reasonable explanation would be Pacific Islander, Mongolian, or half a dozen other places in the region. This reminds me of Spike Lee's argument, Clint Eastwood, about historical accuracy. You got someone here, a black female American who's not bothered by it in the least. Living in Japan, just FYI, the Anu most likely closely resembled the Inuit of Alaska and Canada. Now, someone from Samoa, Pacific Islands, got lost and landed in the Hokkaido region of Japan. I can't see how anyone with that dark of a skin would have been there during the 1600s. And it goes on and continues. I'm not gonna waste too much time on this piece of shit article because it's just, again, when a lot of these people talk about they wanting diversity, they're wanting inclusion, they really just want more black people. That's all they want. I mean, I hate to put it like that because I don't have a problem with like diversity and inclusion and stuff if it's actually there. If we're talking about, made up characters and so on and such forth, that's one thing. But when we're talking about historical figures, real life people, you can't be sitting there going willy nilly. Oh, we're just gonna start throwing in a bunch of people of different races and stuff, and it works both ways too. I don't want to if they ever get off their ass and do a story or a movie, TV series, whatever, based in Africa about some of the great legends and fairy tales and fables and stuff that are all over in Africa that they could easily do if they want instead of trying to basically take over European fables or whatever. But if they ever do any African fables, I don't want a bunch of white people hanging around in there. Doesn't make any sense. It's it's just dumb. It's stupid. I don't like the forced diversity. I've always thought that was ridiculous. It's absurd. This Shogun is a series set in Japan, 1600. So literally, well over 400 years ago. There wasn't a lot of black people over there, if there were any at all. I know some people say, well, it's Yasuke, the first, black samurai and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. I'm not saying that it never happened, that there was never any black people in Japan. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is when you make this argument that, where are the black people? And then try to, shoehorn in all this stuff. Well, it said they were darker skinned. They gotta be black. They gotta be dark skinned. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. Anyway, at this point, there's not a whole lot else to say. I mean, you could read this crap for yourself if you really want. I wouldn't recommend it because the guy is playing really hard and or fast and loose with the reality, basically, to be honest. But anyway, thank you very much for watching and have a good one.